Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times of ours. And in today's episode, Benji and Araceli, saw me without me, are having a conversation all about why you feel that your sexuality is broken, which is an experience that many people actually have. They feel devoid of wholeness in the area of sexuality. So they unpack this. And we're excited because Araceli is really contributing a lot these days. And Benji and Araceli made this completely free of me. So this is like I think that's progress, right? The kids are growing up. They don't need papa love. So please enjoy it and let us know what you think about this new dynamic. I'm really excited to see that they are recording on their own. So please enjoy it with me. I'll be sitting there with you in spirit, listening to this for the first time myself. So let's get into it.
What is good, Heinen? Welcome back to the Love, Life, and Legacy podcast. It's your boy, Benjamin, and who are you?
Hello, everyone. I'm Araceli.
Araceli and Ben are back in action. I almost started this episode by going, "This is my favorite, one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. I don't listen to anymore. It's a video editing podcast, vidIQ. If you guys know vidIQ, they have a great podcast with this African American dude named Viper. That's his like stage name, and he starts every episode like this. Oh yeah, like that, and I love it. It's your boy Viper. How you doing today, YouTube? Like that, and it makes my day. And I wish I was like that, and I could just start every episode with "Oh yeah," but you have regular old Benji instead. Anyways, Araceli, I want to piggyback off of a train of thought that you're having recently about what's on your heart and your mind, and what we can really offer our High Noon universe. And all the work that we do to help people live with sexual integrity, to live with God, to practice the 5 virtues. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, what's on my mind is it's something very much connected with the previous episode. So if you haven't heard it, you're going to have to hear it. I'm kidding. But it's connected because last time we talked about, females' perspective regarding sexuality, regarding even, history of women. And I just want to go deeper into that because I feel like last time we touched kind of like the surface level of things, and I think we can go deeper into it and even bring, your perspective. But mainly my thought is, our understanding of our relationship with sexuality, right? And this has been in my mind because I have a lot of groups right now, and I'm talking a lot with women, with younger sisters, and even, sisters of my age about how they view sexuality, right? And I don't think we understand why we have, our perspective on sexuality. Whatever perspective of sexuality do we have, I don't think we understand why. And I think that's very important to be aware of, okay, why do I have this relationship with sexuality? And, what is my relationship with sexuality, right? These 2 questions, basically. So this has been in my mind.
Got it.
And yeah, I can go ahead and start with, my thought regarding this. But mainly this came from, I had an experience where I realized that I had a very negative view on sex and sexuality, even though intellectually I knew, that we are supposed to have an amazing relationship with sexuality because sexuality, it's a godly, heavenly thing, right? That came from, we were created to multiply and all of these things, right? And so it should have this holy, tone to it. And intellectually, I knew that. But in the way I was talking about it, in the way I was feeling regarding that, and in my actions regarding my sexuality and my relationship to sexuality in general and in sex, it was very, opposite to that. to that, what it should look like, ideally. And I realized that a lot of that comes from, we live in this world where women are sexualized, right? And basically seen as sexual objects, right? And so that already puts a lot of baggage into relationship with sexuality in general. And I'm talking about women in general, but especially in my relationship, my experience, I realized that having been objectified, having, seen in terms of, media content, whatever, right? Newspapers, everything related to women's bodies is sexualized, right? And objectified, basically. And I realized I had a very negative view on sexuality because of that. Because it wasn't being used in a very, godly way, heavenly way, for the purpose for which it was created. And so I was really feeling negative towards it because I was feeling like I couldn't put into practice that ideal regarding sexuality because I had this, previous experience that was so negative. That was one of the things, right? And I realized that I was putting that into my marriage. I was bringing this baggage into my marriage, in my relationship with my husband. I didn't see sex as something important. I didn't see sex as something that was, fostering connection, because I only felt it was, for the sexualization of my body, for example, right? That was one thing. And I actually realized that this has happened to a lot of women. Talking to my sisters, I realized that a lot of my sisters has the same issue, that they don't even think of sex or sexual organs or sexuality and the purpose of it in terms of the ideal, because everything that we see in our culture today is about sexualizing our bodies, right? And so, of course, it's awful. So that's one thing. I don't know if you want to think to that.
Yeah, thank you. I want to add some context for male perspective, which is very similar, but maybe two sides of the same coin, which is the general perspective of men of our sexuality is, I am selfish. My sexuality is wrong, especially in our realm of individuals that are trying to prepare for marriage, trying to beat sexual addiction like porn addiction, masturbation. And so the general consensus amongst ourselves is like, I'm evil and I'm selfish and my sexuality is bad because of that, which is, you could say, inherited, but also our experience through exposure to porn, through the media that you're talking about, is like, because I'm attracted to that and I don't want to be, even though I'm a man of faith and I want to get married and find a wife and have children, I'm still drawn to that. So therefore I must be evil. I must be selfish. My heart must be wrong. My sexuality must be bad because of our natural desire for sexuality, right? So I think that's a helpful context for men, because our conversation moving forward in this episode is going to be, like you're saying, like uncovering why is it that we have these feelings, but also no one really stops to ask, like, where is the goodness in my sexuality?
Yeah.
Where is it? Right? And so that's kind of the frame that I think is really helpful for the male and female perspective too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, to a lot of us women, I'm going to talk about women specifically, but in that context, we stop thinking about sexuality. We refuse to think of sex and sexuality as something that should be good or that is good, right? Because we had this experience and in this context that we're living. And so we don't even think of, as you said, right? We don't think of what is the purpose of it, why should it be good, how is it good even, right? And we just refuse to even think of our sexuality, our sexual organs, and, the ideal of it. And so with my experience with a lot of these sisters is that they are ashamed of talking about, they are ashamed of it, they are scared of it, and they don't want to even talk about it. They are grossed out by it. Kind of like even the thought of, thinking and talking about the sexual organ is gross, is weird and uncomfortable, awkward. And, of course it would be, because we have this weird experience with it, in our lives, in this culture that we live in. But adding to this as well, for women specifically, I also want to mention that in connection to the last episode, historically, right, we had this, I mentioned this in the last episode, this experience, you know, and we know in our faith that we inherit, right, our past, you know, ancestors' experiences. So there's a lot of baggage. It's not only ours in our experience right now. It's a lot of baggage from previous, you know, ancestors and experiences, you know, collectively. And a lot of that experience was, you know, your worth is determined by your virginity, right? Basically. And so you don't have to even think about it, talk about it, you know, see it, whatever. And that's how you maintain your purity, right? And if you are not that, then, you know, you're a terrible person, right? And so what we have today is this culture of not talking about it, not trying to understand it, like even biologically, what, you know, how does our sexual organ functions? And how is it affecting my actions today? How is it affecting my thoughts, my emotions, right? And sexuality is way more than just sexual organs, genitals, right? It's you know, a whole from connecting our emotions, our actions, our thoughts, even. And we don't even know that because we are scared to talk about that. And adding to that, I feel like if you think about the shape, right, biologically of a woman's sexual organ, it's all very hidden, right? We are not confronted by our sexual organ, you know, normally day to day, as opposed to our our brothers. And so it's way easier for us to ignore it, to not think about it. You know, our you know, even our sexual urges, our sexual drive is just way different in terms of our relationship with our sexual organ than to men. So it's just so much easier to ignore it, to be afraid of it, to and even be disgusted by it. I understand it because the way that we are confronted by it, you know, day to day, is when we're going to the bathroom. And what else comes near to that, right? And so it's just something that we need to clean up, and that's it. For a long time in our lives, this is something that we just need to ignore, and we just need to clean and, you know, take care of it physiologically, biologically. And so, you know, I was confronted by this realization. No wonder why women are not talking about this, right? Are not even thinking about this. It's not only that culturally we were raised not to think about it, not to talk about it. You know, our mothers, our grandmothers, they don't talk about it until we have to. And when we have to, it's usually because of the period, menstruation, right? The cycle, when it starts. And it's also a very negative experience, to be honest, because, you know, you have blood coming out of it, and you have, you know, these symptoms that usually, you know, they make you cranky, or you know, your belly hurts, whatever. All these things are not that positive, right? And so for the longest time, actually, I had a big issue with my sexuality because I could only see negatives to it, to be honest, right? It was not only how other people were, you know, looking at me in terms of my sexuality and sexualizing myself. It's also the fact that, you know, there's a lot of negative experiences usually in connection with it. So it's so easy to want to ignore it, and, you know, and also be confronted by it at least once a month, to our knowledge, right? To what we know. But actually, our cycle is 1 month, you know, and each week of that month is a different experience, a different, you know, different hormones are into play, and, you know, all these things that I'm not going to go too deep into, but these things are affecting us, and we don't even know it. We don't even know why, you know, what is the purpose of this cycle? Like, yes, we're going to become pregnant eventually, and that's the only thing that we know. But every week is a whole preparation towards that time that we eventually become pregnant. We don't know this. We don't know how it functions. We don't know how it affects us. And we don't know how to take advantage of it either, right?
Yeah.
And so that really shapes and conditions the way that we feel about our sexuality, the way that we view our sexuality, and the way that we are not connected to it, right? And it should be something beautiful that we are connected to, because, you know, it's, you know, eventually we're going to become mothers, wives, and everything. And it is also the place where we are connected to God, right? Ideally.
Yeah, well, from the males, we are also disconnected from our sexuality, but in a different way, in a very unintentional and non-deliberate way, in the sense that if we, without any prior education or guidance from our fathers, we're basically just animals. I mean, to be real, it's like you hit puberty, you want to have sex with anything that moves, and you don't know why. And so the natural trajectory is like, okay, I'm going to masturbate and I'm going to seek out sexually stimulating stuff, either physically or content. And it's like, that's all that is there available. There's no guidance, generally. Not many fathers, of all the men I talk to, not many of their fathers will sit down with them when they're preteen, let's say 10, 11 years old, and say, hey, you're going to face a lot of stuff in the next few years. It's going to be confusing, sexually speaking. This goes for females too. Not many women sit down with their mothers, right?
Yeah.
And a parent that says, it's going to be hard and confusing, but it's natural.
Sorry to interject here, but I just wanted to remind you that Saturday, April 6th, we are going to be having our 24-hour podcast. It's going to be 24 different topics that we're going to be covering, and in multiple different languages. We're going to have the English chunk. We're going to have the Spanish section. We're going to have Japanese. It's going to be really good. It's really good. So look at, if you go to highnoon.org/summit, it'll show you the schedule in great detail. Pick some topics that really interest you and dive in. And what we're doing is we're promoting you guys to have watch parties or to do this together. High Noon is all about other people. So for the first thing, we're going to have it live. So, people from all over the world will be tuning in. So there'll be that level of togetherness. But you can do watch parties. You can do all sorts of stuff so that you can comment together and laugh or make fun of me or whatever you want to do. But it's so much better together. So go to highnoon.org/summit to check out the schedule and commit to coming to at least a couple. There's going to be a wide range of topics for people in different phases of life. So we got your back. Show up. Want to see you there.
And I'm going to help you, guide you through this every step of the way. Not a one-time conversation, birds and the bees conversation, as they call it, and throw you out into the wild. It's like, I will be here with you, side by side. I will walk with you through these difficult, confusing times, right? And I will show you, and I will guide you. How many parents actually do that? How many children actually feel like they have their parent by their sides in their sexual journey? Or in some sense feel like God is with me. God is by my side. God is in my sexuality. But it really starts with our relationship with our parents and how we were guided by our parent or a wise older person in some cases.
Yeah.
If you think about like true father and true mother's mission and relationship to our parents, like our first generation, in many ways, they were their father and they were mother in the sense that they were like the guide, the educator, the teacher, the person I follow, the example I look to, right? But also, how many people struggle to even digest the concepts of true father talking about absolute sex endlessly? You could argue that he talked about no subject more than sexuality, right? If you just look at, we were just having this discussion in one of our group chats with the participants in the core program, like the 5 steps to change blood lineage, all of them, almost all of them to some extent have some relation to sex. Even the change of blood lineage itself, the steps to do that, which is the core principle of the blessing, and the reversal of the fall, which is a sexual misuse of sexuality, right? At the core of our faith is sex.
Yeah.
But you can't imagine how difficult it is for people to swallow this in our faith. Not because they're deliberately like, we know it intuitively. Like, you can't argue that your father didn't talk about sex. More than we know, actually, he talked about it. Because there's a lot that wasn't translated. I remember being in a room with True Father in America and him talking about the sexual organ, and I can understand him because I understand Korean. He's talking about the sexual organ, and the translator who was on stage wouldn't translate it.
Yeah.
He refused, and then True Father was getting upset at this translator. He's like, just say it. And he was like, no, this went on for like 10, 15 minutes. I'm not kidding. True Father's like, say it. And he's just like, no, I can't. You can imagine, right? It's like there's so much that wasn't said or wasn't translated. And still we have a hard time at a really deep, like painful level. We have a hard time really talking about this and exposing it as a holy and heavenly thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's all of this is to say that there's reasons, right? And that's what we're getting to. There are reasons, understandable reasons, not excuses. Is a difference. Not to excuse and say like, oh, it's okay, but to understand, right? That's what we're trying to do, is understand so that we can know how to resolve or what to resolve and where to focus our attention.
Yeah. I mean, that's so true. Like my mom, she tried to be super open about it, right? And she really tried to talk about this. But even in her understanding, there's a lot lacking, right? There's a lot of things that we don't know. There's a lot of things that even, the difference in generation, the way that we relate to it, right? My mom as a first generation and me as a second generation, the way that we talk about it, the way that we think about it. And also, I also really understand from the parents' perspective, this fear that we might make a mistake, right, regarding our sexual integrity, right? And so a lot of people think, okay, it's best if we don't even think about it so that we won't act on it. We won't do anything about it, right? But we live in this culture, right? We can't be completely guarded. We can't be completely wrapped around a bubble and just not have any stimuli from, the outside world, the media that we consume, everything. And so if your parents are not teaching about this, if true parents are not teaching about this, if your older sister or elder sister is not talking about this, then you're getting the education from, TV shows, your school friends, the media that you consume. And, of course, we know it's not the best. And so everything that I don't know from my parents, it's going to get known from other sources, which are not really connected to the original source, God. And they have a different perspective of what is the purpose of sexuality, sex, sexual organs. And, maybe we talk about it to a level within our communities, right? Within the church and everything, when we go to workshops and all of these things. But, we are growing. And as you said, we need guidance, continual guidance as we grow in our journey to really understand, like, what is the purpose of sexuality, really, right? And how can I actually do something to protect it, to honor it, to really move forward within that ideal of, the purpose of sexuality as a general, and also my relationship with this purpose, with this ideal, and how can I really live that in my life, right? So the reason we are not having a connection with it is because of all these things that we mentioned, right? Lack of guidance, lack of understanding, fear of it, and our experiences just drive us to not even want to think about it, because if we do, we might not be able to control it, right? But if you understand it, then you have a way to control it, right? If you understand the purpose, you have a way that you are going to walk towards in order to control it for that purpose, right? For the ideal purpose. That's the way I feel about it. And that's something that I've been really talking about with my groups. Like, we need to talk more about it. We need to really understand it more, and not just to, say, oh, I know what sexual organs are for or anything like that. It's just for your life, for your relationship, for your identity as a woman, as a man, and creating a vision for it, right? That's what we're really known for here, our North Star goal. If we have a North Star goal for our sexuality, then yes, we might struggle, but then we are also working towards that goal. We're going to be growing, right? We're going to be getting more positive experiences with it. That's how I feel about it.
Right on. So you mentioned your experience of bringing certain concepts into your marriage. How did that turn out or resolve, or what was the cost of that?
Oh, well, we had a period of time where we were really, I guess confused is the right word, and we were not connecting, right, emotionally or spiritually, even through our relationship especially the physical relationship, because I felt like the physical was taking up more focus than the actual connection, right? And from what I understood, at least intellectually, is that the physical should help towards that emotional and spiritual connection, right? It shouldn't be the whole focus, the sexual pleasure, at least. So what we did with that was first, I had to really, be honest about how I was viewing sexuality and the purpose of sex, and really try to change that, in terms of how I felt about it, not only intellectually, but really feeling that this is really important, that I feel good about my relationship with sexuality and my relationship with my husband, because it's the purpose of it's part of the purpose of our relationship, right? So I had to really change that perspective emotionally, and then we had a period of focus on connection with my husband, where we are not thinking of the physical. We're just focusing on the connection that we could have, the intimacy that we could create through other means, right? Without even thinking of the sexual pleasure, the physical aspect. We were just thinking about the connection and how can we, foster that? How could we deepen it? To take kind of like, there's a bit of pressure in terms of the physical relationship that comes sometimes, especially when you're near to it. So we took that out, basically took that pressure out of our relationship and our connection time. And that helped a lot to resolve this, baggage that was there. And for the both of us having that same purpose of connection, it really helped then being able to enjoy our relationship, both emotionally, spiritually, and also physically as well. So nowadays it's completely different. I could really felt a disconnection before, right? I could really feel that it wasn't fulfilling the purpose. I wasn't feeling like connected, basically, right? And so after this process that we had, we were able to really feel connected with whatever thing that we do, because now we realize, sexuality encompasses everything that we do, basically between, within us in a relationship. And so connection can be achieved by many things, not only the sexual relationship, right? But the sexual relationship is also part of that connection, right? It's also another way to get to that connection. So, yeah, that's kind of what we did.
Got it. Okay. So you focused on the internal, and then you felt more connected as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really helped that, we both were open to getting this right. We were both open to admitting that we are growing, that we don't know everything, and that we can change it, right? That we can definitely work it out if we are honest with each other. And so we were not, putting blame into anything. We were just realizing, okay, there is this issue here. How can we do to, make it better? What can we do to change it and really grow ourselves individually, but also within our couple? Because this issue was, it was an individual problem that was manifesting in a couple's, relationship. So we were able to together work it out. So it was great.
Wonderful. And now you guys are perfect.
Yeah. We achieved nirvana.
Happily ever after. Utopian couple.
Yeah.
Right under prepared.
No, like anyone, we have our issues, but we are open to work it out.
Yeah. To work it out. Like you want to stab him in the ear every so often.
But yeah, I mean,
your husband is a big guy. I feel like he can take it.
He definitely does. He takes it. Yeah.
Yeah. He can take it.
Yeah, he can take it. Yeah. He's very squeezable. So sometimes I get a urge to like squeeze it and squeeze him, and he can take it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's probably better than physically harming someone. Just squeeze him.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as he doesn't do that to you.
Exactly. Yeah. he needs to do it in a very controlled level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like like I always talk about Hitoe, my wife, and I've painted a certain picture of her that because no one really talks, no one knows her really because she's never been on the podcast.
Yeah.
And now you're painting a picture of your husband, and so everyone's like imagining like a Totoro type characters. Like, is he like a Totoro? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I actually didn't see it, but I'm pretty sure that he's. Everyone that meets my husband says he's like a teddy bear. He's so huggable. He's so like cute, and it's so funny because I feel the same way.
I know what you mean.
Mm.
I would rephrase it to grizzly bear, just for his sake.
Well,
He's a grizzly bear.
He has no issues with his masculinity. I'm kidding. But yeah. Grizzly bear, it's okay too.
Well, let's see. I want to share my journey, sexually speaking, was transformed when I asked a simple question, which was led by a sermon from Gene Honeycutt. So Gene is, people don't know this, but I will say it officially. Gene has been my best friend my entire life. From I think 3-4 years old, we first met when he moved to North Carolina with his family. He has 6 siblings. And so we were born the same year, just a few months apart. We saw each other every weekend as much as possible our entire lives, entire childhood. So you can imagine how close we are. Just this last weekend, we went camping overnight and slept in the same tent. So there you go. And we drove a few hours, slept in the tent, and had a great time, bonfire, the whole deal. And so he was giving one sermon here in North Carolina, and he was talking about his experience with consulting people because he had a career shift, and now he's doing a recovery coaching, sexual recovery coaching for men. And he's been on the podcast recently and a few times. And he said one of the things that he's trying to distinguish and discern when he's talking with men is where's the healthy parts and the unhealthy parts in their story, in their experience. Where's the goodness and the not so goodness? Or you could say the God and the Satan, the enemy, right? But I think it's a more less abrasive way just to say the healthy and unhealthy.
Yeah.
Because people don't like Satan. People don't like talking about evil, but let's just say healthy and unhealthy. And so he posed the question, which is like, where is the goodness in your sexuality? And I mentioned this earlier in this episode, is that our tendency is to think as default, my sexuality is bad, is wrong, is evil, is self-centered, and I can't recover from this. I can't create a blessing. I can't beat my addiction. I can't. And then you have to ask, okay, where are those thoughts coming from? Right?
Yeah.
Where are those voices coming from? It's evident that people have quit porn. There are plenty of people that have. It's evident that people have surpassed difficulties and received the blessing, created not ideal, but blessed families, right? As you and I have.
Yeah.
And yet still people believe I can't. That's not in the cards for me. That's not my life. I can't. Where's that coming from? So there's some part of us that is actually a very unhealthy, very dark, and very shadowy thing that is there, and usually, in almost all cases, consumes most of our perception of our sexuality. And so he asked that question, is like, where's the goodness in your sexual journey? Where's the goodness in your sex drive? Where's the goodness in your sexual energy? Where's the goodness even in your sexual experiences? Not to say that all sexual experiences are good or bad even, but where's the goodness in that? And that's a really important point to pose a question to ourselves and reflect on. And so I was really thinking deeply about this. And because my default thinking is similar to most people, men and women, is like, my sex drive is bad and I'm selfish. As a husband, this is how I felt. Like, I want to have sex because I'm selfish. I don't know why, but that's like the default thinking I have. Well, I know why. We were just talking about it for the last 30 minutes. But that was just, I accepted that. And I wasn't even curious to know, is that true or not? I was just like, this is a constant insidious feeling that I have, is that my sexual energy is selfish. It's bad. And so I was like, that can't be true, because logically I know it's God-given. I know that. And so I actually journaled about this. I really went deep, and I was like, okay, first of all, when my wife and I are intimate, I always prioritize her. Always. try to give her a good experience, emotionally, physically, right? And I was like, well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And the other point is that I have 3 children. I have 3 children. I am raising 3 kids. And I have given life with my sexual urges, right?
Yeah.
My sex drive. I have given my wife children. And I'm creating life and maybe more to come.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it just shifted my perspective from like, oh, I'm selfish, I'm wrong. But actually, my sexual energy has done a lot of good. It has done a lot of good.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, it felt like just peace. Like I could finally see a light at the end of the tunnel that I've been walking through basically my whole life. And then as soon as I saw that light, I was like, oh, there's a light.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I didn't know I was in a tunnel because it's just dark everywhere. And I just assumed that this is what life is like.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, I imagine when people go to hell, if people do go to hell, it's just darkness everywhere. And then you just accept that this is what it is forever. There's no like, oh, I'm in hell. It's just like, this is life. But I saw a light and I was like, oh, I'm in a tunnel. And I just have to keep walking down this tunnel and then the light will grow and bigger and bigger. But the catch is that we have to sometimes walk through the tunnel in order to get to the light, which means we have to face a lot of the demons. We have to face a lot of the uncomfortable conversations and difficulties that will come naturally when we face the darkness.
Yeah.
When you face the enemy, it is really uncomfortable. But my experience, there's a way to do it in a way that's more holy and more, I would say, chanoguk, which is that you focus on the light.
Right.
Instead of focusing on the shadows.
Yeah.
Right? Because the more we focus on shadows, the more we give power to them and the more they consume us. And there is one quote from True Father where he says, he's talking about marriage, marital spouse. He says that as you continue to live for the sake of your spouse, your selfish mind will disappear completely. Those are the exact words from the autobiography. If you continue to focus on serving your spouse, living for the sake of your spouse, your selfish thoughts will disappear completely. Which is in essence saying that you focus on the good, on the light, and then the shadows will be overcome by light. Because in the end, that's the only way that the shadows will disappear. You keep walking, the light gets bigger, the shadows dissipate and disappear and fizzle until you can live in that high noon life. But you have to walk through the tunnel and focus on that North Star, if you want to call it that.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. I love that the focus on understanding, right, the healthy aspects or the conscious aspects. Because part of the issue that comes with ignoring, this ideal purpose of sexuality, the godly vision for our sexuality, and even biologically how it functions and everything, the downside of that is that we don't know that there are parts of it that are natural, that are God-given, that are our responsibility to grow, to use them for good, as you're saying, right? And so you don't even know that there's a tunnel, as you're saying, and that's because we are unconscious about it, right? The main thing that I want to drive home is we really need to start becoming conscious and aware of how all of this works. That the fact that we have a negative perception regarding our sexuality, the fact that God actually has a plan for our sexuality, that it's amazing and beautiful, as Benji was sharing, right? And that even without knowing everything, that there are healthy and natural, biological, whatever, good aspects of our sexuality within our experience, as well as, of course, the unhealthy, not so good, that we also need to be aware of in order to change, in order to solve, in order to redirect to this ideal. And yeah, it starts with facing those conversations. It starts with becoming aware of the mistakes that we've made and how we can fix them. And, I just want to also put into this conversation, not forget that we are loved by God, right? And that all of this comes from God, and that we can get forgiveness and that we can accept that forgiveness. Because the other side of what Benji was saying about not understanding that we are in this tunnel, in this battle, and we solely accept that, the other side of that is actually accepting that there is good, that there is light, that there is love. And a lot of the times it's so hard to accept it, even if we know it logically, intellectually. It's so hard to accept that we can be forgiven, that we are loved. So this is all part of this conversation, of this whole process, right? It takes time, but all of this is part of it. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I'm going to put the actual quote here now from True Father, because I don't want hearsay. Here's a quote. This is from True Father's autobiography. There's a chapter called The True Meaning of Marriage, right? It's a short paragraph, don't worry. Marriage is not a simple matter of a man and woman of marriageable age coming together and combining their two lives. Marriage is something built on this basis of sacrifice. The man must live for the sake of the woman, and the woman for the sake of the man. As you continue to live for the sake of your spouse, your selfish mind disappears completely. The heart that seeks to sacrifice this way is the heart of love. Love is not a man and woman meeting each other and having a good time. Love is offering up your life. If you marry, you must do so on the basis of your determination that your life is for your spouse.
Ajib. Yeah, and that's it.
There we go. All right, everyone. Do check out our programs. Everything we're talking about, we are practicing and giving you daily actions. Go to highnoon.org. Join a program. They're awesome. They're free. They're just for you. Yeah. They are just for you. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, Araceli. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Bye.
Sweet.
Here's another reminder about the 24-hour podcast. You can hear about stuff, right? You can hear about it. Doesn't mean you're going to do it. It takes people a lot of coaxing and cajoling in order for them to do anything these days, because we're so inundated with all this stuff. But guess what? This will be worth it. If you want the world to reflect your values, and you have heavenly values, then we need to have more conversations. And it needs to be international conversations. And that's what High Noon is all about. So tune in to this podcast. Show up. Commit. Write to us and tell us which section are you going to come to? Which one are you really excited about? Show up. Be there. You can be accountable. I don't know how to say this. You can let us know and we'll keep you accountable. Holy moly, that was tough. So I'll see you there.